Thank you, Senator. Hello, everyone. General Shelton said after listening to Madam Rajavi speak, there isn't much left to say, but after listening to General Shelton, there really isn't much left to say, but I'll take a shot at it. When we met in Geneva 4 or 5 weeks ago, the situation didn't look good. But since our meeting in Geneva, there have been some things to give us hope. Some progress has been made back in America. First, 15 of us, generals, governors, senators, attorney generals, former heads of the FBI, ambassadors, signed a letter to the President of the United States that was published in the Washington Post and the New York Times, delineating what had happened, the history here, the shameful history to the United States, and letting the American people, I think for the first time, get an understanding of what has been going on at Ashraf. That was real substantial progress. Secondly, we had a rally before the White House. We literally stood before the White House with 5,000 people supporting the rally, and both Governor Ridge and myself and many others, Desmond Tutu's wife, we were all there urging the United States to take action to save human lives. And as Governor Ridge said to me that day, he said, did you ever think when you were growing up and when you started to become an elected official that we'd be standing outside the White House protesting the actions or the inactions of the government of the United States? And that's one of the great things about America, and it got a lot of attention. We were on national TV, and the rally, again, helped bring this matter more to the American people's attention. And then, as General Shelton referenced, 42 congressmen signed a letter to the UN Secretary General asking him to take action to remove the deadline and to send a U.S. monitoring team in to protect the residents of Ashraf. And what was so amazing about that letter was that there were some Democrats and some Republicans signing on to the same letter. So it's a big, impactful statement to show that there's a bipartisan appeal here. And that has to put the administration on notice that the Congress is watching. The American people are starting to watch, but so is the Congress itself. And then Secretary Clinton has been making statements that give us real reason to hope that delisting is near. Secretary Clinton was quoted last week as saying that she understood what the European Union did in its delisting of the MEK as a terrorist organization, and she saw the opinion of the European Union that there was no evidence, and she's aware of that opinion. They're doing their own independent review, and they're going to make a decision soon. The fact that she talked about the European Union's delisting, the fact that she talked about the fact that that respected body found no evidence, is reason for us to hope. Those are all good things, but time is running out. Time is running out. First, we need to delist and delist quickly for the reasons that General Shelton said. Let's strip away any other excuse, any possible excuse that the Iraqi government has to legitimize an attack on innocent people. That has to happen. The evidence, or the lack of evidence, is overwhelming. When President Obama led NATO in coming in to Libya to try to save genocide from happening in Benghazi, originally, there was criticism of President Obama, and I said, and a number of us said, the President did the right thing, because if the U.S. is going to use its military power, the first thing we should use our military power for is to prevent the slaughter of innocent people because of who they are or what they stand for or what their religion is. That's job one for the American military, in my judgment. And what happened in Benghazi was an enormous success, and the use of really more a show of force than anything else helped topple a dictator, helped bring at least some patina of freedom back to the nation of Libya, but most certainly it stopped the massacre of literally hundreds of thousands of the residents of Benghazi. So even if there had been no history here, I would make a strong argument that when there's a clear pattern of attacks on innocent people, we have the right and the obligation to step in to protect them. But as General Shelton pointed out, it's more than just a general right. We never made a promise to the people of Benghazi The people of Benghazi never gave up their arms to the United States military. That happened here. 3,400 people gave up their arms and agreed to accept disarmament in return for a solemn promise by the United States of America that they would be protected. They signed a contract. Each and every one of them signed a contract with the U.S. representatives of the U.S. government saying we would protect them. So it's much different than Benghazi. We gave our word. And our word has to be good for something. I don't care what the niceties are. I don't care what the surrounding circumstances are. When we get people to give up their weapons and they're relying on our protection, we have a moral as well, in my judgment, as a legal obligation to be there and to do whatever it takes to protect those lives, whatever it takes. And that's something important. That's the core of what America believes in, the things that we stand for and the things that our country was founded on. And in our letter to President Obama, we wrote the following. All 15 of us wrote the following, and Mayor Giuliani and I authored this letter. We said in our letter to the President, our country did not sacrifice over 4,000 lives to install and protect a government whose cowardly assault on defenseless members of the MEK dishonors and disgraces the memories of our fallen heroes. These brave men and women did not give their lives to support a brutal regime that bends to the will of Iran by harassing, wounding, and killing innocent people that our military previously promised would be protected. It's time for the American government to step up and lead. It's time for the American government to step up and assume its responsibilities. It's time for the American government to stop making excuses and stand for the things that have always been near and dear to the hearts of Americans. Our country was built on our desire to be free, on our desire to be protected, to do whatever we want, to practice whatever religion we wanted. Those are the core values of America. And if we stand for anything, we have to make sure that not one more resident of Ashraf is injured or killed. Not one more. Not one loss is acceptable. Well, our message to our government is, the whole world's watching. It's time for us to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Salam. Mrs. President Rajavi, Your Excellencies the mayors, dear friends, I'm coming from a country that also had a dictatorship until the early 90s. Maybe some of you have known this. We know what hardship was, we know what terror was, we know how it was to live in a country without justice. And because of this I can sympathize and I can feel what people, or some of the people from here are feeling. And the second reason that I'm here is because in my country there is not much awareness of the situation in Iraq and the situation in Camp Ashraf. So I think that after this long day I can bring, when I go home, I can bring bring the ideas and the thoughts that were expressed here and to take them to my fellow colleagues, politicians from the Senate or from the government. Just in a few moments I'll refer to the Amnesty International announcement. The warning given by Amnesty International should be taken very seriously by the international community, since the camp has previously been under attack, and the consequences we already witnessed in this video that it was shown to us before. While the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees announced in a statement in September 2011 that it had received a high number of requests, from the camp residents and was putting in place a process to determine them on an individual basis. One would have expected full cooperation from the Iraqi government if sincerely worked out solving the problem peacefully. But however, the Iraqi government has systematically hindering possibilities of peaceful solution. It has to cooperate with with High Commissioner on Refugees. The question is why the High Commissioner for Refugees has not taken necessary measures to start interviews with Ashraf residents yet. The High Commissioner must not allow Iraqi government to arbitrarily stop the legal process and enforce the violent attack on defenseless, unarmed residents of the camp. We urge United Nations and the UN Security Council to compel with Iraqi government to revoke the deadline for closing the camp, and as it was said before, to undertake protection of the camp residents by blue helmets until the High Commissioner on Refugees accomplish its tasks and resettles the camp residents in the third countries. A UN flag on the camp provides the necessary political protection for the camp. I'd like to say in the end another two ideas. One of them is that I ask, as it was asked before here, the American administration, especially the Department of State, to delist PMOI from the terrorist list, because this is a very important step in solving the Camp Ashraf problem. Please let me give you a short quote from a novel that I just few months before I was reading. A short quote which I think can sum up our discussion today. And I quote, "Sometimes it's more important how you spend your time rather than how much time do you have to spend." So that's why it's important that we are doing what we are doing now, because in fact we don't have too much time. Thank you very much for your attention.